Today we're in for a special treat. I was able to interview Natalie Nadine. Natalie has been able to use online entrepreneurship to help grow her offline business. So don't miss a second of this value-packed interview. Welcome to Entrepreneur's Toolbox. I'm Jonathan and I'm here to help you find the tools to build an income online. I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so make sure that you subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified every time that a new video goes live. I'm not gonna waste any more time, so let's just jump right into this interview. Hi everyone, Jonathan here. I'm here with Natalie Nadine, and could you introduce yourself, Natalie?
Hi guys, thank you very much, Jonathan, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And so for myself, I am an entrepreneur. I've been in the space for since about last year, and I work from the lens of mindset and business growth strategies.
That's awesome. So you kind of answered a little bit of this question already, but who you are. So where are you from, and what exactly do you do online?
Great question. Originally, right now I'm in Canada. So Ontario, Canada is where I am, just south of London. So if anybody's in that area, they would kind of know where that is. Sometimes they say London and people think UK London, but I'm actually Ontario, London. And originally I came from England. So I moved to Canada when I was 8. My grandparents were here already. And so my parents decided they would come over and join their parents. So off we came. And then as far as what I do online, that is kind of a blend of a bunch of things. So the short answer is I help people kind of figure out what is standing in the way of them getting to the next level. So that is the short answer, but I think you'll have a question that will come up that'll like pull some of that other details out.
So I was just going to ask, what was your defining moment in your online journey? What was something that was kind of like that trigger to get started online, or what really was your biggest motivation to start?
I knew that this would pull out some of those finer details. So what the defining moment was that I sort of kind of just spread my wings and went like, they're going to work there. I'm going to fly. That moment happened when I was walking from my car, or from my house to my car, and I got in my car and I realized it hit me. Like, I'm so conditioned to going from my house to my car and then driving to work. And it's like an autopilot thing. And so as I walked from my car, or from my house to my car, I realized I don't actually have to do this. Like, have been in the therapy world and the mental health world for so long now. It's been about 20 years that the people that I went to school with and have worked with have left, and they have their own private practices now. And I'm like, so why am I still going to work every day when a lot of people I started out with have left to go do something else? I'm like, my aha moment was like, why don't I just call them and ask them like what it's like? Because for me, it's really scary. I have 3 kids. I have a household to upkeep. How am I going to make a transition from over here, the 9 to 5, to over here, private practice? And so I just started calling people up and started asking them like, hey, how did you do it? What did you do? What did it feel like? And everybody was so encouraging and so empowering. And they're like, if you want to tap your business in with my business and you need any support in any way, you need referrals, whatever you need, like we will stand behind you and support you because we know the quality of your work. So like, don't doubt your wings because you don't have, you've never done it before, or whatever your negative belief might be. Just fly and see what happens. And I was like, okay. So that was sort of my aha moment that kind of clicked. And it was because of that conditioning of going from the house to the car, and to work, and just feeling like, why am I still doing this? Everybody else has sort of moved on from this. And I've hit sort of the ceiling and I'm limiting myself. So yeah, and then I just kind of got started looking online. So I bought purchased a course online, and it was how do you set up your private practice and fill it full of clients, because that was my first need. If I have a practice, then I need to obtain clients to fill it. So I purchased a course, and the course, what it actually was, it's funny, it was a ClickFunnels platform. So they shared the template that I uploaded into my account. And then they taught you how to run Facebook ads to target audiences, which was not what I was looking for at the time, but it ended up being a really helpful skill long-term. And because it wasn't what I was really looking for at the time, I ended up like actively still hunting. And so I realized, oh, this is a funnel building platform with an affiliate marketing piece to it. And I was like, whoa, there's affiliate marketing? Like, this was mind blowing. Like, this is great. So I ended up then finding more groups and getting more involved in the digital marketing piece, getting more involved with the community and networking with more people, finding different tools and resources along the way. And that was what led me to realize it's not a tool, and it's not a resource, and it's not a course. It's actually your mindset. It's actually our belief that we believe about ourselves that needs shifting, or like a new perspective, or just a change for somebody to shine a light on that. And so that's sort of where I started at filling my private practice as a therapist, and then moved to like there's an affiliate marketing world, and there's tools and resources, and then realizing people can't use the tools and resources because their mindset's in the way. And so I ended up going like right across the spectrum, because the therapy world and the coaching world, they don't always play nicely in the sand together. And so it was interesting when I first started out. I was thinking, do I open a private practice as a therapist, or do I open it as a coach? And now it kind of encompasses everything, because that mental health and mindset piece comes into play.
You kind of touched on this already, but like, what was your first step to getting started online? You mentioned that you talked to other people that, had already stepped out to, go onto their own private practice. But you did things a little bit differently than them, or was it exactly the same?
Right. I did things differently. So I think most people's journey, they come from a place of like having a massive why, and they have, a massive need to get money into their accounts. Whereas mine didn't stem from that. Mine has always been from a burning passion of how do I help people? Like when I'm on mat leave right now, and when I was working my 9 to 5, my biggest fear was I'm going to be stuck at home with a baby, and I won't be able to help anybody. When I was doing my counseling and therapy portion of things, it was really challenging because my job was to go into people's houses and talk to them about what's working with their family, what's not working with their family. Children's aid and social services were usually involved, and we needed to take action quickly so that I could back these the professionals out and work with the family to really turn things around quickly. So we had 13 weeks to make sure that their children were no longer endangered, and to make sure that the parents were stepping up to the plate. And if that didn't happen, they were at imminent risk of losing their children. And so I would go into these homes and quickly realized, hey, I'm about the 5th worker you've had. I get that you're stuck and you don't like it and it's sucky, but let's make it fun. And we just developed this really cool relationship. And so that was one of the first steps that I realized was it's relationships first. It's not about the money. It's not about like, convincing people into your program. It's like, will you let me in the door, and will you sit with me, and can we talk about our journey? I'm not here in a way to threaten you. I'm not here in a way to like convince you of anything. Let's just see where you're at, see what you've done so far, and make a plan together. And so when I took that approach with families who were at imminent risk of losing their children and didn't really want to have another worker in their house, I realized they would open the door and they would invite me in, and it would just change the whole dynamic from an us versus them and this hierarchy thing. And so that, I think, is a different piece about myself than typically happens.
That's a really powerful way to structure things versus just,
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different way of structuring things. I found when I landed in the digital space, I tried following all the gurus and the fun, all the methods that were taught and being taught out there. You have to like qualify your buyers or your prospects, and you have to like ask these specific questions in this specific way in the messenger and do it like this. And then I was doing those things and I was finding it really intrusive. And I remember thinking, if somebody spoke to me like this, I would end the conversation, or I would just ghost them, not wanting to engage with them. And so it was from that angle that my program started to take off, where I started saying, like, what was it like when you were talked to like that? Who wants to be asked if they need help? We talked about that little word. I wrote a post about it a couple days ago. I think it was yesterday. Nobody, even 2-year-olds, they don't want to be helped. And so if we're trying to connect with people and encouraging, treating an individual and like a human being and like an adult, then why are we connecting with people and saying, what's your goal for the next 3 months? What's your goal in 6 months? Where do you want to be? What financial goal do you have? Can I help you with that? Like, it's really intrusive to ask those questions, and it puts that hierarchy in place. What we want is a shift, so it's a side-by-side alliance, so that I tell my clients when we work together, it should feel like when you knock on the door of somebody's home and they answer the door, it should feel inviting. You shouldn't be peering behind them like this and then asking questions like, I see you've got a couch back there. Why did you pick that color? Like, wouldn't it look better over there? Like, why did you put it there? You want the individual who opened the door to step aside and invite you in and be comforting and invite you to sit at the table. And so often people will ask me, well, if you're not asking any questions of individuals, how are you qualifying your potential leads? Like, how do you do that then? And so I fall back then on my years of mental health, where I literally was trying to get in the door of people who have not had great experiences, but professionals. And so it became something that my nervous system carried. And it's something that you can feel when you're having, even in Messenger, when you're having those conversations with people, you can feel people being like, and you can tell they're one word answering it. They're not inviting. They're not wanting to participate in this conversation anymore. And so I just use the same principles, like as in, let me in your home. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to sell you anything. I am just genuinely coming to have a look to see if our journeys align and if we can support that growth. If there's any growth that needs to be done, like maybe there isn't. Maybe we're just going to become colleagues and be in this space and, message each other backwards and forwards from time to time. But maybe you might see my engagement and wonder how I got 300 comments. And maybe you might, ask, and it's always on the other person's terms. So it's never something that I do that tells them like, I make this much money and there's no big run on in terms of that. It's always about the other person. They're the ones that are letting you in the house. So it's always about them and what they need and what they want to do. And so they get to ask that question about what it is in terms of what they need, if they need anything at all.
That's really good advice, because I mean, I know I've been on the other side of that, where I get like a message on Messenger and it's just immediately sending me a link or something, or even just, I see the value of actually caring about somebody else first.
Absolutely. And it feels completely different when it shifts to that. And even when people are trying to qualify me, I will just step away from that conversation, but usually politely say, like, I understand that you're trying to qualify me as a potential, like a prospect or a potential lead or something, but like, I'm really not wanting to go down that pathway with you. Can we have a conversation? and the individual sort of like, the last 2 people that it happened with, they you could tell they were really taken aback. And then because I post about it so often and post little tips and little pieces of value, I'll often tag them in my posts, in my comments, so they can see exactly what I'm talking about without me having to, do much else.
That's a really smart idea. Just after you talk to somebody and you'd have a related post, and then you could just tag them about it, and they could see what you're already doing. What is your vision for your future? I mean, you're just starting about a year into your online journey with your practice, but what's your long-term vision for this?
My long-term visions, again, a pretty unique one. It's not one that's like, let's scale it and make a bunch of money. It's how many people can I help? How many people's lives can we touch? And so I have the online therapy business, the online coaching business, and the affiliate pieces. But the therapy side is actually growing. So it expanded during COVID for including moms that are isolated and have newborns that can't get out into the community. So when a mom has a baby, they rely heavily on their own family. Like especially if they're a first-time mom or a first-time new couple with a new baby, it's really, 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 really difficult to be isolated during that time. And so people's anxieties were high. So I started doing outreaching to those moms. And I just started with a coworker who said, I just had a baby and I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. And the only person she really knew that was helping families was me. So she kind of reached out, and that blossomed quite a bit. And then it just recently has blossomed again to include those that are touched by substances. And so drop-in shelters and places like that. My background is trauma and attachment. And so often there's this argument, not even argument, but discussion around addicts that use and the trauma that, was the trauma there before the using, or was the using creating the trauma, or what's going on with that? So anyways, I've been working with a local drop-in center to help support mental health and awareness for those that are touched by substance use. So long-term, hopefully that will open up, and Ontario's government, the government of Ontario, will start funding that. And so our healthcare here in Canada is government funded. Mm-hmm. So my hope is that mental health and addictions will partner together, and I'll be able to get in there and do some work and the government will provide free services for those that are in need.
That's really powerful. That's a really great goals. And I know you're gonna hit those goals.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been pretty exciting. We've been having discussions around that, and some of the fundamental things that needed to be in place are starting to happen, like peer mentorship. So we had a peer mentor program that's up and running. So we started putting that in place. The government releases research grants. And so we are looking at obtaining some of those research grants so we can put a program in place and measure the success of the program and develop different things. So it's already, balls are rolling. And so it's pretty exciting.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I think for them, for me to watch them be successful, when I think about the people that I'm helping, they usually come, I use analogies a lot. So they usually come, and I think of it like a plate of spaghetti. So if they have a plate of spaghetti, they'll usually arrive and they'll say, this noodle right here is the one that is falling off the plate all the time. This is the reason why I can't eat spaghetti, because this one noodle right here won't get on my fork, or whatever. And so it's usually the safest place that they want to start with. That one thing that they've identified is not usually the root of what needs to change. It's just the safest place that they want to identify. So they'll come forward and they'll say, I don't know why my business isn't working. I've been doing everything. I've been showing up. I've been posting content. I'm putting value out there. I don't know what's going on. I really just want to do lives from my profile and get a huge amount of engagement. And so when we look at that, we're like, okay, what does it feel like when you think about going live on your profile? And they're like, it feels like this. And they explain all this anxious worry and wanting to withdraw and run away. And so they explain all these feelings. And then when we start getting down to it, we realize it's not so much that you want to go live, it's that you want your like that approval from your family, and you're scared of doing the lives because your family might see them and not approve. So as I pull this noodle, the entire plate of spaghetti starts to slide. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Like, let's pull it back on and let's have a look at some of these other underlying factors. Like, look at this noodle over here. This one's pretty big and pretty long and pretty powerful. Like, do we want to talk about this? And it's totally up to them if they want to talk about their family. But we can talk about, let's separate the profile. Let's like put a list in place, or let's develop a group. And then if you feel safer in a group, then let's just put it all over there in the group. Like, if it's not a fear of you actually going live, like you can be in front of the camera and that's not a problem for you. It's the fear that your family might be let down or embarrassed or even be ashamed or all these other feelings that is actually the plate of spaghetti. So now we can actually go back and talk about, where is that shame coming from? Well, why are you feeling that way? What occurred? And it's usually 0 to 3 time frame. In the years of 0 to 3, your primary caregiver looked after you. They nurtured you. But if that person was an anxious person, or a person that had mental health, or a person that had too many other siblings, like too many other children too quickly in succession, then it's really difficult for a mom to look after a newborn and a 2-year-old. That is usually the most challenging. The people, my clients that come to me that say my sibling is born within 2 years of me, are the ones that typically have the most spaghetti sliding. They're the ones that are like, I feel this way, and I feel this way, and I feel this way, and I have a relationship with my spouse, and that feels this way, and this way, and this way, and I have a relationship with myself that feels this way, and this way, and this way. But when we look back, the earliest relationship that you have had will be the indicator of what sets the rest of the relationships up. So the first relationship, the first time you're taught about a relationship is usually from the primary caregiver, from like back then. And if she's having a hard time because she's recovering from delivery, she's got a newborn baby to nurse, and she's supposed to be trying to run after you, who's wanting to be autonomous and climb and jump and be on a swing and explore, which is very age appropriate for a 2-year-old, it's a conflict. Mom cannot meet both babies' needs. And so when she tries to meet the toddler's need, often the baby starts to cry, and she's got to come back to baby, which means this person's unsupported. And so anytime this person feels unsupported, they go back to when they're 2 and they didn't have the support of a caregiver. And so it's very triggersome to people. So what I do in my sessions is I unlock, we explain that and we unlock that, and I use a lot of energy and healing work to work through what that's like and why it's in place and how do we get around that. So it's just rewriting the narrative and, grounding tools, and it's cool.
Rewriting the story that you're telling yourself.
Exactly.
Like mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really powerful. No, I just think that's really powerful.
Yeah. And I have recently started doing posts about that because I was realizing people think that they have a positive mindset. People think, you know what, I'm pretty positive. And myself included. I'm like, well, I'm pretty positive. And so I wrote a post about being in the workplace. And when I was working in the workplace, I did not think that I was easily triggered or I was sensitive. But one of the clues that would come forward was at nighttime when I would go to bed, I would fall asleep easily, but then wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I remember that girl who she looked at me this way. And when I walked past, everybody was talking and then they kind of laughed. And I think that maybe I said something. And what was it that I said? I think they took it the wrong way. Like, I would just have these racing thoughts about I wasn't good enough or I did something to upset people. And eventually I got sick of that and realized I could make that anxious worry go away if I just stopped and asked people. So I started making that a mission. Like, I am sick of being driven crazy at night by my thoughts. So I won't have these thoughts if I know for sure. And I won't know for sure if I don't go ask. So I then became known for this person as, people would say, well, is Natalie mad about that? And it was easy for them to answer because they're like, well, if Natalie was upset, she would have came and told you. Like, she would have come and been transparent and said, like, when I walked past, you guys started laughing. Like, what was with that? Or was that not even related? Or was that a me thing? Or like, I just had feelings around that. And so I thought I would come back and share. And they'd be like, oh my goodness, no, not at all. And then they would explain, like, my partner called and we were having a hard time with something. And then we didn't, they would explain the backstory. And so I was like, okay. Which was neat because then one of two things would happen. They actually were talking about me and they actually stopped and, changed their behavior because I was present and it was regarding me. But now that I've confronted or brought it to their attention, they're aware that I've noticed and they changed that. Now they're nice. Now they want to, like, not be seen as this ogre-like person, right? Or they really weren't talking about me and it was in my head and I no longer have to worry about it. But both resulted in the same outcome for me, that I didn't have questions at nighttime wondering, what did I interpret that wrong? Was it me? What should I have done differently? All of that racing thought stopped. And so I was able to sort of, I didn't know at the time, but it was probably some sort of anxiety or something that was happening. But I was able to capture it and contain it by going back and asking those questions. And then just being comfortable with knowing that I'm being transparent with people.
So I wanted to know, what do you do when, like, the unknown happens? And that could be in your business or in your life. I mean, you have kids. I'm sure you have unknowns happening all the time.
Yeah.
How do you put it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a sort of person that, like, I live kind of carefree and worry-free and sort of liberated, right? Like, I do what I want, when I want, and not because I don't have rules, but because I don't have a fear of what if. And so trying to think of, like, an example would be, we went on a trip. This was probably 3 years back, and we went to Florida, and we took I think at the time he was 2, and my husband is a worrier. And so he is the kind of person that, well, let's prepare for this and prepare for this and prepare for this. And I'm like, let's wing it and be confident in our skill set to know that we're going to survive it, right? And so we went there, and because he was such a worrier, I was extra cautious in, like, making sure I had reservations booked, making sure I had all the paperwork booked and available, making sure I highlighted all the numbers and, like, all my P's and Q's were in a row. And so I thought, and so we journeyed, we got off the plane, we got to the airport, we went to get our rental car, and we waited and waited and waited. And I called the number that was on the reservation form. Nope, no answer. It kept going to voicemail that was full. I'm like, what is going on? And so we're just trying to stay calm, but we're exhausted. Our baby is, like, super annoying and needs a nap. And like, I was starting to we were all starving. They don't feed you on the plane. So it was annoying. Anyways, after I think it was like 3 hours of waiting, it was a huge amount of time waiting to figure out what's going on with this rental car. I finally went and asked a different a terminal and asked, like, hey, where is the company called this? I forget the name, but, like, where is this rental car company? Where do we pick up that car? And they're like, they started kind of chuckling, and they're like, that place went out of business like 6 months ago. And I was like, oh no, what do we do now? And so I'm, like, far away from home. I'm, like, starving hungry. I have a baby who's, like, annoying as heck. I have a husband who's, like, pissed off to the max. We're, like, it's in the blazing sun. We have all this luggage, and my phone's going to die. And I'm like, is there really anything else that could go wrong? And so I think I just laughed because I was like, this is the most ridiculous trip ever. This I don't even know what we're going to do. And so the guy was like, yeah, let me take you to our rental car company, and you can just book from our company. So I was like, all right, cool. But I'm typically just sort of, so I went with them and I explained the story, and they ended up giving us a really good discount and just, like, getting us hooked up and on the way. They ended up giving us the same price as the other, like, original one that went out of business. And so they were just good people. But that was all my own mindset work. Had I have been in that state, 3 or 4 years before that, easily I could have been, an angry, why me? This is terrible. Just not able to put things together. But now I'm just sort of if this has happened, there's no changing it. The company went out of business. That's a fact. So it's not changing. So I try to look at things, take a step back and look at the bigger picture and be like, okay, like, what do we want? Like, we're all safe. We're all here. We're going to stand inside the airport. We're going to stay sheltered. What can we do? And so I try to like break it down and not let my emotions kind of get in the way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I feel pretty prepared for unknowns. The same with the virus that happened, right? Like I have kids. They're not in daycare or school. They're, I'm trying to run a bunch of businesses and they're here all over the place. And so there was a lot of unknown around that. And sometimes it would feel like people around me, I don't know if people know that story, Chicken Licken, where he's running around and he's like, the sky is falling down. And so I felt a little bit like people would come into my inbox and be like, did you know the sky is falling down? And I'm like, okay, let's step back and take a survey of actually what's going on. If I stay home and if I stay, isolated, what's the best case scenario in that? Well, I could probably get some really good games for the kids. I could probably have some really good bonding time. We have a huge backyard and lots of land. We can, use that. We're in actually a really good position versus where we could be if we were in an apartment building or somewhere where we couldn't let the kids out. I'm like, I always try to flip it so that it's not me that's a victim. If I flip it, then I often will find a solution.
It's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's see. All right. So for the next question, I'm just going to see, is there any book or resource? It could be a course or anything that you've read or gone through that you'd suggest that somebody definitely get or find?
I am a big fan of, I really like George Bryant's stuff. Mm-hmm. And so he's somebody that's similar to myself, talks about the importance of having a relationship first, that this isn't a business for, convincing people and getting them to join and attracting them to you for your own purposes. This is a business that is client-led. If they can tell you what they need, then without you having to ask and pick apart and being really intrusive, then you've got a friend for life. Like, it's about that relationship and that attachment early on. So in order to lead, you have to be able to connect with somebody. You can't lead from a place like this and call your person up to you. You have to be parallel and then walk beside. And so George is really good at being able to say, it's relationship over those transactional pieces.
I'll have to look into him. I haven't heard of him before, so.
Yeah, he was in another interview one day last week. Somebody had him in their group, and they hit me up, and they were like, "This person sounds so similar to like the things that you speak about. You got to go check it out." And I checked it out, and I kept pausing it because I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, he uses a lot of analogies as well to connect, and I think that's one of the big pieces is being able to have those stories, connecting through stories. And when you think about like how do kids connect, they tell us these stories. In fact, they don't really ever shut up. They just, did you know, in one day, and that's when you look at marketing, that's how it needs to be viewed. People that pop in your inbox and are like, you need to check out my picture. I just spent all day drawing it. Do you want to check it out? And you're like, not really. But it's polite, and that's part of the attachment is walking beside. And would you say no to a toddler who spent all day drawing a picture? No, you wouldn't. You would take the picture and hand it on the fridge and be like, okay, I checked it out. It's awesome. That action creates that connectiveness. So now at some point, like you doing that puts relationship dollars into the relationship account. So the next time you need to ask for something, it's not that they owe you, but it's not from a place of like, what do you want? Why are you knocking on my door? It's of like, hey, do you still have that thing on your fridge? It's like, oh yeah, I still do. I did check it out, and I should have probably got back to you, but yeah, I checked it out. It looked like a pretty cool thing. How are you making out with that? It completely shifts that conversation to a place of jolliness, I guess, versus a place of like, I'm going to judge you and then critique you and then tell you where you should be going and what you should be doing.
So we all need to get toddlers to do our marketing for us, right?
The idea is we can only show up when we're stressed as our youngest portion of ourselves, which is kind of deep, but most of us have early traumatic events that took place. And so that's why when people fall in love, they start acting differently. Or when people have a stressor, or people that are driving, have somebody cut them off and now they're angry. Angry people, if you get angry and I get angry, it probably looks different. Everybody's idea of angry is going to look different. And so whatever the stressor is, will bring out the youngest form of yourself. And so marketing can sometimes bring out people's youngest form of themselves. And when we speak to that, if we always view it as the youngest version of themselves, you're usually not wrong. Usually not far off.
Awesome. So for the next question, I was just going to ask, do you have a current mentor? I know you mentioned that you had learned a lot from other people that had their own private practices. Do you have somebody that you'd say is your mentor that's assisting you through your journey right now?
For myself right now, I do follow George. I also follow Wayne Crow. He has Traffic Dominations. And so he does a lot of just different additional pieces to marketing. He does like quite a bit of email campaigning. He does Google ad stuff. He also has a group that when you send people to that they can get training and learn all of these things. And what else? I don't do a lot of reading. I do a fair amount of YouTubing. I always like learning and digesting more things. And then the therapy side, this was really different from the mental health world into the marketing world. There is a massive disconnect in terms of support. So when I go out to see a family, right away, we have a debriefing session. We find a colleague, we go talk about what happened, what we saw, what we felt, what we seen, what we recommended. We just dump everything. And then in the coaching and marketing space, we don't do that at all. It's very rare that you would get, somebody that you would talk to about the conversations you've had on a day-to-day, but it's super helpful to have that. And so I've been providing that for people where I'm like, okay, like just send me the screenshots. What happened? Why are you so stressed out? But it's compacted, people not taking enough breaks, people not, debriefing properly, people showing up as their youngest self and not even realizing that they were triggered by something, and not knowing like to step back and ask questions. So yeah, I don't have a mentor per se. I think I have lots of people that I follow, and I have like a go-to person for my therapy. I have a supervisor and a go-to person over there. I have a go-to person that I talk to about like organic engagement and strategies. I have a go-to person about email marketing and campaigning. I have coaches that are kind of in the space with me. Then we'll talk about different things that we're seeing and familiarities. So I think it's just a well-rounded network, I guess.
If there was one piece of advice that you can give somebody like that was just getting started on their entrepreneurial journey, what would it be? That's just one piece of advice.
Oh, to nail down just one. I would say that it has to be right for you. So I see people sometimes putting a lot of energy into something that doesn't, for myself even, when I first started, I put a lot of energy into things and followed things to a T. And I was like, this is what they say is supposed to work, and I'm following what they say. And it felt so counterintuitive. It felt so wrong. And I could feel myself waking up and getting more and more exhausted and being like, this is wrong. There's something wrong about this. And so I would say try different things and see what fits for you, because there's not going to be this whole concept of find a proven method and follow it. It's not something that I believe in, is find a perfect method and then follow that to a T, because there will be elements of that won't align with you, that will burn you out, and it'll like cause you to second guess your decision into getting into the online space. You have to kind of find pieces. So use a proven framework, but let that be like, let it resonate and let it be known that that is just a proven framework. It would be similar to if you were going to shoot a bow and arrow. So when you purchase this bow and arrow, or there's somebody who is using this bow and arrow effectively, and they hand it to you, you have just watched them shoot, like pull back, draw, hold the arrow, and the thing just shot, and it shot and it hit the target, and you were like, wow, like that looks easy. It's a proven method. It worked. Like, give me the bow and arrow. And so then you get a hold of it, and it's like too heavy, and it's like too big, and you're like, why is it so flimsy? Am I doing this right? So they try to help you the best they can. But then when you pull it back, you realize like it's still really off balance, and the arrows aren't really like working. And then when you fling it, it just like goes 2 foot and falls on the floor or on the ground. That's what happens when you haven't tweaked things for your style. So somebody else's tools aren't necessarily going to be what you have or what you need or what's going to work for you. What I would say is find somebody, pick that apart, have somebody like walk with somebody, journey with them, let people know like this aligns with me, but this feels really weird. This kind of jive, but like this part is exhausting. Being open and exploring all of that stuff is the fine tuning of drawing back that arrow or string and then firing your arrow. It's somebody that's going to journey with you that's like, yeah, that's not even the right size. Like we're going to get you one that's going to fit better. So instead of adding 50 people a day, you're going to add 20 people a day because you don't want to be in Facebook jail. You're like, that person's account allows for that, but yours doesn't. So it's somebody that can walk with you so that you're not getting frustrated by not getting the same results that you just seen somebody else who's using a proven method with. Mm-hmm. That would be my advice.
That's actually really, really great advice. And so just to wrap everything up, I just wanted to ask, how could anybody find you if they wanted to get in contact with you?
Oh, great question. So in order to find me, I put an offer together just for the interview. So those who see this interview can reach out. It's natalienadine.com/90 minutes. And typically I do a full 5-week program. It goes and covers 90 minutes of a Zoom call and talks a little bit about the analogies and growth strategies and business strategies and just sort of tweaking that bow and arrow proven framework to meet your needs a little bit better, so you're not burning out and getting, exhausted doing different tasks. And so I put it together an offer that is a 90-minute call, and you guys can just sort of see if that's a good fit. And the link there should take you directly to that offer.
Awesome. That sounds like a great opportunity. Thanks again, Natalie, for sharing your story and everything you've been going through with my audience. I know that they've got a lot of value. I got a lot of value out of this interview, and thank you again.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks for asking and inviting me to interview and letting me share my journey. Thanks for the time. I know it's a time allotment, and I'm thankful that you were able to do that with me.
I appreciate you coming on again. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I hope that you got an insane amount of value from this interview with Natalie. It really shows how growing online can help your offline business. And don't forget to check out her offer. If you liked this video, your next stop should be my interviews playlist. I'll put a link in the description. If you have any questions you want me to ask on future interviews, leave them in the comments. And if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.